Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 145. Cool and Epic. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. Welcome back to the Stories Told podcast. I'm author E.W. Barnes, and with me is author Michael Grayford. And today we're talking about the story told in the movie Project Hail Mary, and there will be spoilers in our conversation. So if you don't want to know what happens, go see the movie because it's really good, and then come back and listen to the podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing pretty good today. Not super excited, but we're moving along. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And what's new in your writing world?
New in writing world, I haven't gotten much done. One thing I realized, so my cat was sick.
Oh.
She started having issues. And I've learned that for me, like when something like this happens, any kind of disruption like this, it really throws me off of my mental game.
Yeah.
In terms of like wanting to focus and wanting to create. And it's like, whether I'm like moving, I've moved a bunch recently, and it's like you move and it's just like it really disrupts my pattern. It takes me a long time to get back into things. Or if I'm sick, or even if I have to, when I went to Florida to take a trip, and it's like, it's just disruptions like that really screw me up for a long time. So yeah, I'm trying to mentally get back into it. Yeah. So I was, worried about the cat, and she seems to be getting better now. So
Good.
Yeah, hopefully she's on the mend and my brain can get back in gear. So yeah, that's where I'm at, unfortunately. What about you?
Well, and I think that's an important thing to recognize that, I used to call it using up my RAM. Maybe it's using up my bandwidth is a better way to describe it. But when you have stuff on your mind, you don't realize how much of your brain it actually chews up until you try to focus on something as complex as writing a novel. And then you're like, wow, I just don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that maybe that's true because there's a lot you have to keep in your head when you're writing, and you kind of want to write from, well, at least me, and then particularly the stories I'm working on, I want to write from a place of joy and wonder and excitement, right? That's kind of what I'm going for. They're, young adult fantasy adventure novels. So I kind of want to instill that feeling in them. And when I'm kind of, down or off my game, it's not easy to get into that mindset. So yeah, it's definitely an issue.
I hear that. In my writing world, nothing really has happened. As we talked about in the last podcast, I wanted to give myself a little bit of a break from the story so that I could come at it and really look at sort of this inciting incident that I have written from the perspective of a reader to make sure that all of the character reactions make sense. But what I've been doing in the interim is I decided I wanted to, we've talked about this before, how I like to write short stories, and I've got some ideas for short stories for my existing time travel series. And so I actually started plotting out a short story yesterday, and I think I might be working on that today, seeing what I can get done with that. And as we've discussed, I like to do 5,000 word short stories, which is not a lot. It's for me, it doesn't chew into my bandwidth the way a full novel does.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's good. Just staying with it, keep going, put in what needs to be done or that I want to get done. And it doesn't matter if it's not exactly on the novel that I'm working on.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling good about that.
Yeah, that's smart.
And have you encountered any interesting stories in books, movie, or television?
Oh, just the movie that we're going to discuss today. Nothing outside of that. Nothing new anyway. Stuff we've talked about before, I'm sure.
Okay. I'm still reading A Stainless Steel Rat.
Excellent.
And I watched a kind of a fun, it's not really, fantasy or sci-fi, but I watched a fun Agatha Christie mystery made into a 3-part series on Netflix. It's called The Seven Dials, and that was kind of cool to watch. I think that was well done and interesting to watch. And then, of course, at the time of the recording of this podcast, this is the week that Artemis 2 blasted off and is now, I think, currently in orbit of Earth before it does its translunar injection to go to the moon. And so that was a lot of fun to watch that. I have to say, I got a little choked up watching the launch. It brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah, that's good. I flipped onto it. It's like, oh, the launch, and it's like, and it was counting up. So I'm like, oh, so they must have missed the initial launch window, I guess. And I was like, well, I don't know how long this is going to go. So I didn't end up watching much more beyond that. I never actually got to see the launch.
And it was cool. It was cool to watch.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm very curious to see how this goes.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled that we're back in space. I'm thrilled that we're going back to the moon. I'm thrilled that there's constructive plans of what we're going to do with the knowledge that we gained from, this mission. I think it's really cool.
I would like to see something other than going back to the moon, but we've been fairly stagnant as far as manned space exploration. So, hey, whatever we have to do to get that going again, and this will be a first step. Maybe we'll establish some kind of launch base there or something, at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good first step.
I agree. Speaking of launches, are you ready to talk about Project Hail Mary?
Let's do it.
Today we're talking about the story told in the movie Project Hail Mary. And once again, there will be spoilers in our conversation. I'm going to read the summary that comes up on Google when you type in Project Hail Mary movie. Science teacher Ryland Grace wakes up on a spaceship with no recollection of who he is or how he got there. As his memory slowly returns, he soon discovers he must solve the riddle behind a mysterious substance that is causing the sun to die. As details of the mission unravel, he calls on his scientific training and sheer ingenuity. But he may not have to do it alone. Did you enjoy this movie?
Yeah, this movie was a treat to watch for me. I was really worried, because we talked about the book. Obviously, I really love the book. That's one of the best books I've read in a long time, and I was excited for the movie coming out, but nervous as to how you would do that adaptation. But hopeful because The Martian was really good. I never read the Martian book, but I loved the movie, so I was hopeful that they could make something good with this as well, and I feel like they did. For me, it really, really worked. This was a very movie theater kind of cinematic experience. I'm glad I saw it in the theater, and this is the kind of thing that this is the kind of movie that I think works really well in that setting. It has nothing to do with the movie or the story, but I kind of wish it was 3D. I don't know if you ever saw.
Okay.
Did you ever see Gravity with Sandra Bullock?
No.
Yeah, it's not an amazing movie, but it's like sort of like a fun, action-y survival story, and it's set in space. And I saw that in 3D, and it was just amazing in 3D because it feels like you're just floating out there in space with her, and it was really cool. I would have liked to have seen this one in that way too, but that aside, it was a great cinematic experience. Yeah, I was fully into it. Overall, I feel it was pretty faithful to the core of the book.
Yeah,
in terms of the plot and the general feeling of it, which was a great thing. Obviously, a ton was removed for the purpose of the movie. I mean, that's inevitable, but I think they kept the core of what made the book good there. Yeah, I really, really like this movie. One thing that I didn't pick up on when I read the book that I noticed this time watching it through, and I think I didn't catch it because the story is told in 2 parallel timelines, right? There's like present where he's working on the problems, going on when he's in space, and then there's the past where, it's all before he goes on this mission. And they're sort of each going linearly, right? And we're seeing bits and pieces of both of them. But the story structure, if you look at it as like a linear story, it's really a truly reluctant hero's journey, right? You have the call to adventure, right? Where oftentimes the character is like, hey, go out of your normal life and do this crazy thing, right? And there's often a refusal to the call to do that. And then, they're sort of presented with the opportunity again or nudged again, and then they accept the call and go on that adventure. Well, this one, he just flat out refuses twice. It's like, nope, I'm not going on. And I thought that was very interesting because there are different ways to handle things. And that's one element that you don't see a lot, where you often have a character sort of pushed on their way, like, Luke Skywalker, right? His aunt and uncle die, and then, spoiler alert, then he's like, well, there's nothing left for me here, so he goes. But in this one, he's literally like forced to against his will. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't notice that. I mean, obviously, I know what happened in the book, but I didn't recognize that as a refusal of the call, like a flat out refusal of the call to adventure. So I don't know. Anyway, from a writing perspective, I thought that was interesting. It just shows that there are a lot of different ways to handle things, even in what is perceived as sort of a standard structure of a story. So that was cool. That was just cool to note for me.
I want to jump in and tell you, it's like you're reading my notes.
Yeah, such a thing too. Huh? And then, of course, he ends up stepping up to the plate in a big way, right? He goes sort of unknowingly, maybe, but he does. Another thing I didn't catch at all, not until I read someone's comment online, was so he's in the Hail Mary, right? This ship. And his name is, what is his name?
Grace.
Hail Mary, full of grace, right? Thought that was amusing and obviously intentional, but I'm glad they didn't actually point that out. It just, just sat there in the background. Anyway, I thought that was funny. But story-wise, I thought that they did a great job of developing the friendship with Grace and Rocky. I think that is really the core to this story that makes it so enjoyable to read and to watch. And I thought they did that really well. They clearly focused on that over other aspects, like, going so much into the science and a lot of the problem solving, which I think was probably the right decision. I mean, you're doing it as a movie and a cinematic experience, and you want to make this as broad as you can. And I think they did that very well. I think the movie's doing fairly well from what I've seen. It's, resonating with people and getting good reviews, I believe. So that worked. I also love that the way they handled the ending in a couple of ways, because we talked about this when we were discussing the book, and one of us mentioned that it would have been nice if they had gone back to see, the reaction of the people on Earth.
Yeah,
we never got that in the book, and they did that, and I think it worked really well, and I'm glad they did that, because I felt that was wanting in the book, and I thought it was a nice little wrap up at the end that helped make the resolution more satisfying. And then they also, in the movie, I don't remember if they did this in the book. Andy Weir, the writer, I don't remember if he did this in the book. I don't think so. But in the movie, they left open the possibility of him returning home, right? It's like, okay, your ship is repaired, you can go back home. So that whether he goes or not, I love that possibility is there, because we can, as viewers, at least imagine how epic that return would be, right? This guy comes back after saving the whole planet. Like, that would be amazing. Whether it happens or not, I like that they left that open as a possibility. But yeah, generally, I like this movie. I thought it was great. Those are my positive thoughts.
All right. Right off the bat, I loved the movie. I plan to own this movie because it was absolutely marvelous, and it was as good as the book. In some ways, maybe better. And I say that very hesitantly. No, I'm not going to say it hesitantly. I'm going to say it's, instead of better, I'm going to say it's enjoyable in its own unique way. The visuals were so beautiful. It was breathtaking.
Yeah.
And the book is beautifully written, and you get the visuals in the book, but in a movie, they have the ability to do so much with the visuals so that you do literally I'd literally got my breath taken away. It was so beautiful. But I made the same note that you did about the refusal of the call. And one of the things that I noted that I thought was absolutely fascinating was because I too, when I read the book, I assumed the refusal of the call was his sort of saying, no, you don't need me. I'm a school teacher at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But what they did in the movie is that they put the refusal of the call almost at the end.
Yeah.
Which meant we had an opportunity to really get to know him before we saw what could have been a scene of disappointing cowardice.
Yeah.
I mean, it was disturbing to watch him running and be drugged and be forced into this. His resistance to it, the desperation that was evident in that decision. And when you're watching a story like this, when you're engaging in a story like this, we do have a bias, I guess is the right word, to a brave hero.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because that's what most of our stories are about. And so here we've got somebody who was like, no, absolutely not. And it's all about being afraid. Understandably, totally understandably, relatably afraid. Who wants to go into a spacecraft into space and die? Nobody.
Yeah, it's like it's on the borderline of like disgust for the character. It's like, dude, this is for the whole planet. And it's almost unbelievable. Like, well, you're going to die anyway. You might as well go try. But at the same time, it's so relatable. It's like, I'm going to go die in space alone.
Right.
Like, I mean, maybe
or would I rather be in my home surrounded by the things that are comforting to me and the environment that I know? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's totally relatable. But if it had happened at the beginning of the film, we might not have been able to connect with him.
Yeah.
And instead, putting it at the end, I thought was an amazing choice. And I didn't realize that when I read the book, like you. I didn't realize that that was the true refusal of the call. And the placement of it in the movie was a kind of brilliance.
Yeah.
And I think it was that way in the book too, but it just did not, it stood out in the movie in a way that it didn't stand out in the book.
I think it was, I don't remember where it was in the book, but it was definitely later in the book as well.
Yeah. The other thing is that you pointed out about the end and about his being told that his ship was ready. And to me, what I really enjoyed, there was a really great character arc here. Not only was it unusually crafted in that you didn't see the full arc until the end, but you also saw that he was afraid to make choices, and those choices were thrust upon him. And at the end, he's given a choice and he's not afraid to make it. He's just going to, there's not the same kind of resistance to making the choice and the decision. It's more like, yeah, I'll think about that. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. And it's also, he refused the call because he's like, well, if I'm going to die, it's like, I want to be like, it was all about staying where he was, right?
Yeah.
Being on Earth and maintaining that life that he had for as long as he could. And now at the end, like, even if he ultimately decides that, we said that he's moved on. He's comfortable being on another planet with completely surrounded by aliens is okay to him.
Yeah. I will also say I really enjoyed how they expanded on his environment at the end. In the book, his environment was described as a little claustrophobic, a little unaesthetic.
Yeah.
Kind of just... Sorry?
Yeah. I wondered about that too, because I that's what my memory of was from the book. So yeah, I agree with you then. I thought like that was much nicer in the movie.
I like this a lot better. Yeah, I like it. It seemed like it was a worthy reward for the journey that he had taken. And I don't mean the literal journey, I mean the character journey that he had taken.
Yeah.
Well, we really like this story. Is there anything we might have changed as a writer?
There's some things that I might have changed. I think when he first wakes up, right, and he sees the two dead astronauts with him, he's like, he has a moment where he's like, okay, he kind of ejects them into space, and it's like he doesn't know who they are, but he's like, well, we're in this together apparently, right? But once he remembered who they are, I would have liked to have seen him take a moment, to express some grief or additional reflection at that point over his fallen comrades, because it just kind of went from that scene and then it just went on, and we didn't have any, additional emotion from him at that point. Because when he first, when he ejects them, it was just kind of like, okay, well, this is something I guess I have to do. It wasn't really, super emotional for him because he didn't know who these people were. So I would have liked to have seen just a moment of that. And then let's see. Oh, also relating to them, I don't remember in the movie if there was ever an explanation or a hypothesis given for why they died and he didn't. So if it was there, I missed it. If it wasn't, I would have liked to have seen something, whether either an outright explanation or him giving a guess for it.
It was there, and it was really very fast.
Okay.
And it was a blip. I think it was very, very easy to miss.
What was it? What did he say?
He has that this long-term coma was dangerous and that only a few people could survive it.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I do remember something about that. Yeah. It seems awfully convenient, but for the story, but I guess it makes sense. It is about getting him alone on this ship. One thing that I felt lacking from the movie that I enjoyed in the book, and I think would have been a good moment in the movie if they had just had one moment, was the director. I think her name was Strat, right?
Yeah.
Strat. I would have liked to have seen the power she was given, because in the book you get the sense that she can do anything she wants. I mean, she can destroy an entire nation if she wanted to in order to save the planet. And here it was just like she was like almost like a bureaucrat director. Some of the things she does are kind of imply that she has power, but I would have liked to have seen something like they did in the book where it was just she could do anything. And it's like to show like how serious this was and how seriously they were taking it, that she could move mountains if she had to. And I didn't get as much of a feeling from that in the movie as I did in the book. And I thought that was cool. So I would have liked just at least one example of that. I would have liked some explanation for why Rocky got better after he saved Grace. He just kind of holed up for a while and looked basically dead. I guess he just needed time, but I would have liked some kind of explanation there, even if it was just him saying he needed time to heal. It's like he was just fine all of a sudden and they moved on like nothing happened. So I would have liked something for explanation for that. And then there was a couple times where I would have liked more clarity on specific steps for things they were trying to accomplish. There was a couple times where, like, especially in the action scenes where it was like, it was tense and I understood that it was tense. The music's going, right? There's hectic action, but I didn't know exactly moment to moment what was happening. Like when he was out on the ship and he's like counterbalanced with some other part of the ship. It's like I didn't get a sense of like what was really happening there. It was all kind of, there's a bunch of dangerous things that are happening, but I didn't understand like why, what was he connected to on the other side? Like logistically, things didn't make as clear. They weren't as clear as they could have been, kind of like that sentence I just said. Yeah, so there's just a couple moments like that where I wanted some more clarity. And there's also, although we talked about the science in the book and how there was so much of it, and it was like something that could possibly, turn some people off because it was very, very hard sci-fi, I would have liked a little more of that in the movie. There are things that they do, but it's like sort of hand wavy at some point. Even when like the Talmiba evolved and escaped the xenon container, and so it damaged the ship. It's like he basically figured that out in like 5 seconds. Like that was a moment where they could have taken a little bit longer just to show him really doing some science. Yeah, but those are small things. All this stuff at the end of the day is fairly small. I think if you hadn't read the book, the movie stands on its own and does a great job. But those are some of the things that I would have improved, or at least changed, I should say. How about you? Do you agree with any of that? And if are there any other things that you would change?
I do. I think you raised some really cool points. And I hadn't considered how valuable it might be to sort of show Strat given carte blanche to do anything to save the world. And they could have done that like at the very beginning. And even with just like text overlay, I don't want to say text overlay like across the screen, and I don't want to say like newspaper headlines, because that would not be accurate for the kind of conversations that we're having place, but maybe like emails or proclamations from planets. You just get to see like a header of a proclamation and her being handed, the keys to the world or something like that. And all while, you're doing the opening credits. That could have been done, because the feel of the movie is a very light feel. I mean, there are serious things that happen, but the overall feel is kind of a light, uplifting feel, right?
Yeah.
And so to have that scene at the very beginning, just to set the stakes, like you pointed out, I think would have been helpful. And then you could have gone on with the sort of lighter feel of the rest of the story. I think that you raise a really good point there. I like all the suggestions that you made. And the only thing that I would add to it is that at the very end of the book, Rocky came to tell Grace that their scientists registered an increase in the brightness of our sun. And that little closure piece to let Grace know that his mission had been a success, I think was a really valuable thing that was not in the movie.
Yeah.
And I would have liked that to have been included.
Yeah, that's a good note too.
All right, let's talk about themes. Did you come up with any themes?
Yeah, I mean, I forget what we discussed when we talked about the book, probably similar themes. The thing I pulled out of here is selflessness, right? Sometimes you have to step out of your own comfort zone for the betterment of others. And that's what, ultimately Grace had to do, knowingly or unknowingly. he was forced into it, but he stepped up to the plate. And, Rocky did too. And then at the end, when he realized, Rocky wasn't going to make it back, he made the selfless decision of, well, I'll send the solution back to Earth and I'll go save Rocky. So that's what I got.
I like that. I focused on the character arc of Grace, and I focused essentially on the word grace, right? Because as you pointed out, we've got this very well-known prayer, Hail Mary full of grace, and we've got grace in Project Hail Mary. And of course, it's being used differently. In Project Hail Mary, the Hail Mary is the long shot attempt at success.
Yeah.
But we also have this character who, when he first wakes up in the ship, is showing grace under pressure and figuring out how to function in an impossible situation. But then, when he realizes and remembers the entire story about how he got there and his realization that he had displayed so much cowardice, which he can see now through the lens of Rocky, because Rocky is inherently brave. Rocky thinks Grace is brave, and Grace is like, actually, no, I'm not. But he had the grace to forgive himself and move forward and find that bravery when he made that choice to save Rocky instead of going home. So to me, that theme that I pulled was the value of grace and the multiple meanings of grace that we got to see in this film.
Well, that's a good one.
As a writer, what do you take away from Project Hail Mary?
I mean, since we talked about the book, which obviously there's a lot more going on in the book. I'm looking at this from like taking the book to a movie. So for me, the important thing when doing this is when you're doing an adaptation, make sure to keep the core characters and relationships strong. And I think that's why this movie works so well.
Yeah. And I have almost exactly the same thing. The relationships drive this story.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us as we talked about the story told in the movie Project Hail Mary. A huge thanks to our Patreon supporters and all our listeners. If you'd like to learn more about our stories, consider checking out Michael's young adult fantasy novel, The Golden Scarab of Balahar, an enchanting quest that will captivate readers who love magic, wonder, and a dash of humor. That link is in the show notes. The Stories Told podcast is on all major platforms. Please like, subscribe, or follow to help us reach more story lovers like you. For book, TV, or movie suggestions, subscribers can drop a note on the YouTube channel. As a note, we're taking a few weeks off, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the story told in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Thanks so much, Mike. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on the Stories Told podcast.